This is a unique war. The ghost warriors are elusive like smoke. Wherever they go, all life instantly turns to nothingness, until the appearance of a man. That changes the course of this war. A few days ago, an American soldier was carrying out a reconnaissance mission on the Eastern European front. He was wearing the most advanced hyperspectral imaging device and discovered many civilian corpses in a ruin. All of them had rolled back eyes and strange death expressions. Then he heard a strange sound. The soldier followed the sound to a ruin. Suddenly, a white energy entity appeared in the hyperspectral imaging. Immediately, the imaging device's signal was also disrupted. However, when the soldier took off the device, he found nothing unusual. When he put the device back on, the white energy entity suddenly charged at him. At the same time, the protagonist Mark was searching for tetracene in a junkyard. This substance can be used in transistors for luminescence. After returning to the lab and installing the tetracene, he tested the performance of the pulsed laser. At the moment the laser was emitted, the ice in front of him completely melted. The military wanted to conduct live experiments after seeing this. This went against Mark's original intentions. He designed the weapon for deterrence and defense, not to melt human bodies. By nightfall, his superiors came to talk to him. The hyperspectral imaging device he developed has been equipped on the Eastern European battlefield. The situation there was very sensitive. A soldier captured something he shouldn't have seen before dying. However, the military was unwilling to disclose the content of the video. General James hoped he could go over to help solve this problem. Soon, Mark flew to Eastern Europe. James personally came to receive him. He informed Mark that a rebellion was taking place here. The US military was there to quell the unrest. After arriving at the base, James showed him the footage recorded by the imaging device. In the video, white ghostly figures appeared multiple times. Mark was stunned. He didn't know what this is either. Then James took him to see the video of the soldier being killed by the ghost. But before that, Agent Franny asked him to sign a confidentiality agreement. If he revealed what he saw, he would face life imprisonment. After signing, he watched the video. The moment the Special Forces soldier was touched by the ghost, he died instantly. The speed of such a death shocked Mark. Franny told Mark that the insides of those touched by the white figure would freeze, while their skin would show signs of burning and corrosion. Recently, many civilians had died in the same manner. Autopsies couldn't provide an explanation. Some local youths would spray ghost totems at the scene of the incident. They believed that the terrifying war had awakened some kind of spirit. James asked Mark what he thought. Mark said he needed equipment and time. Only by capturing more specific footage could they make a judgment. But Franny said there wasn't any extra time left. If he had no ideas, they would have to submit the existing results. They initially speculated that this was some kind of cloaking device, that the rebels were using dynamic camouflage suits to attack US soldiers. Mark thought this was ridiculous. The local rebels couldn't possibly have such advanced technology, because the US Combat Research Institute was also working on this issue. They were still far from a prototype, and the US was already the most advanced in this field. How could anyone create it before the US? Even if it were cloaking technology, how would that explain the cause of these people's deaths? Franny suggested it could be shockwaves. Mark said they were just guessing. To draw a conclusion, they needed to capture clearer footage. After hearing this, James commissioned Mark to carry out the task. Mark brought an advanced hyperspectral camera, larger and more powerful. It would be installed on a Humvee. With this, as long as they were close enough, all the ghosts would reveal their true forms. Mark stated that he didn't want anyone else operating the device, so he would accompany the special forces on their mission. Soon, the camera replaced the machine gun on the vehicle. The surrounding special forces soldiers saw the equipment being replaced and mocked Mark. Fortunately, the sergeant stepped in to help him. Then the special forces set out to carry out their mission. They were to penetrate deep into enemy territory to rescue the trapped reconnaissance team. The smoke of war spread through the city. Everywhere were buildings destroyed by gunfire. The armored vehicles quickly arrived at the target building. The Special Forces soldiers immediately got off the vehicle and entered a state of alert. They provided cover for each other as they entered the building. The Special Forces methodically split up to search the area. Inside the building, there were bodies of rebels everywhere, and there were also fallen reconnaissance team members. As expected, their deaths were similar. Suddenly, Mark saw energy fluctuations on the monitor. Everyone immediately aimed their guns at a bathtub. It emitted a faint blue light in the spectrum. It looked very much like a ghost. A few cautiously approached the bathtub. Then they flipped the bathtub over. Just as they were about to shoot, they found a soldier hiding inside. They quickly helped the soldier to the side. He was utterly terrified, and recounted the horrific events to them. All the reconnaissance team members died in an instant. A cold blanket had penetrated their bodies. He said that the dead teammates were upstairs. Meanwhile, another team was advancing upstairs. Everywhere were the bodies of reconnaissance team members. Their corpses showed signs of low-temperature burns. One soldier suddenly noticed something unusual. He thought it was just a device disturbance, but the next second, the energy fluctuation suddenly took on a human form. The soldier immediately opened fire, but the bullet passed through the energy entity and hit the wall. The captain immediately ordered the soldiers to switch to stronger weapons. He was determined to take down these mysterious killers, but the ghost's speed was too fast. The reinforcements hadn't even seen the ghost. Before being taken down one by one, wherever the ghost passed, the soldiers fell like grass in a storm. Finally, someone spotted the ghost in the imaging device. Everyone immediately opened fire towards the front, but the bullets passed through the energy entity and hit the wall behind. The special forces suffered heavy casualties. Mark urged the sergeant to order the team to retreat, but Franny insisted they couldn't return empty-handed. It certainly wasn't sending you to the front lines. During the sergeant's hesitation, several more soldiers fell. He quickly ordered all the team members to retreat. However, the ghost continued to hunt them from behind. Its speed was too fast. The slower soldiers were instantly killed. Moreover, it could crawl out of windows. A soldier descending hadn't even reached the ground before being swept away by the charging ghost. Mark wanted to capture footage of the ghost, but the controller was too slow. He quickly jumped out of the vehicle to activate the device. At this close range, he finally captured a clear image of the ghost. Mark looked at the footage in disbelief. The energy entity had a distinct human face. Could it really be a war ghost? At this moment, the sergeant charged out to deliver a fatal blow to the ghost. He lifted a rocket launcher and blew up the ground in front of him, but when the smoke cleared, the ghost was unharmed. Instead, it became enraged and instantly took the sergeant. The soldier who had just run out of the building also couldn't escape. The remaining soldiers jumped into the armored vehicle to escape. Only then did everyone catch their breath. Mark asked the reconnaissance soldier how he survived. He learned that the bathtub had protected him. Suddenly, the armored vehicle on the move hit an enemy landmine. 2 armored vehicles were flipped over. The reconnaissance soldier they had just rescued also died as a result. The surviving soldiers crawled out of the armored vehicle. Without the cover of the armored vehicle, they could no longer return to the base. They now needed to find a building to take cover in. Mark hurriedly removed the camera and followed the soldiers to an abandoned factory. Franny was sitting nearby with blood dripping from her head. Franny looked scared already. Franny tried to call for help, but the communication was down. Now they realized the white figure wasn't a cloaking device, because no human could pass through walls, let alone be hit by armor-piercing rounds, and remain unscathed. The ghost had already killed 19 Special Forces members. One soldier asked Mark what they really were. Mark only said that the ghosts resembled humans, and had their own consciousness. Everyone was stunned. Wasn't this just a ghost? Many imaging devices had been destroyed in the impact. The ghost could attack at any moment. Fortunately, Mark's camera proved useful. They placed the device at a high window. Through the camera's display, they saw a large group of ghosts trying to break into the factory. But strangely, they were stopped by a circle of black sand. One soldier had just fallen into the sand, and there were remnants of powder in his hand. Mark discovered that it was pure iron shavings. The ghosts could actually be blocked by iron shavings. Moreover, the iron shavings had been spread in a complete circle around them. They realized that there were others here. They raised their guns and prepared to clean up the building. As they entered the corridor, they were met with gunfire. When they got inside, they discovered that the ones shooting were actually a brother and sister. Through conversation, they learned that only the 2 of them were there. Their father had spread the iron shavings outside the factory. Mark asked the sister where her father was. The girl's father knew how to block the ghosts. He understood the ghosts better than anyone. But when the girl brought them to the room, there was only a body killed by the ghost. The girl's father had unfortunately perished while setting up defenses. Then Mark found a piece of ceramic on the body and a map of Masarovi. There was a nuclear power plant there. The girl said the nuclear power plant was the source of it all. All the ghosts originated from there. At this moment, the radio operator had contacted headquarters. James would send helicopters and tanks for support. Due to nearby power lines, they couldn't land. They could only evacuate to a square 800 meters away. But outside the door were ghosts everywhere. Everyone began to discuss how to get out. Suddenly, Mark noticed that the barrels around them contained iron shavings. This could be used to buy them some time. As elite special forces, the soldiers thought they could make dirty bombs. The factory had plenty of glass bottles. With a small amount of explosives, they could make iron shrapnel grenades. They also had grenades and other containers. And soon they started making grenades. At the same time, Mark started modifying the camera. He reversed the polarity of the internal components, and added a light source to turn it into a spotlight. It could emit specific wavelengths of ultraviolet light. All ghosts would reveal themselves under its illumination. Even with the naked eye, their presence could be seen. He then shared the modification method with the engineers at headquarters, so they could equip the tanks with spotlights as well. The next morning, they completed their preparations, and were about to evacuate. Suddenly, the reconnaissance soldier noticed movement in the distant building. Mark turned on the spotlight to investigate. The light illuminated the building across from them. The ghosts revealed themselves in the light. They were blocked by the iron shavings on the ground, and prepared to enter the factory through high-voltage cables. As the ghosts charged in, everyone quickly retreated. As soon as they exited the factory, the ghosts spotted them. Their speed was too fast. The soldiers could only fire iron shrapnel grenades at them, but the effect was minimal. One of them fired a grenade at the ground. This hit successfully trapped the ghost in place. This method was effective, but there were simply too many ghosts. Everyone stops fighting and quickly escapes. The ghosts chased closely behind, and the iron shavings could only temporarily hold the ghosts at bay, and couldn't eliminate them. The ghosts charged at them with their tails trailing behind. Although they had the cover of the iron shrapnel bombs, some soldiers were still killed upon contact with the ghosts. The squad dared not stop, and ran toward the evacuation point. The pursuing ghosts multiplied. The soldiers fired a large number of grenades. The scattered iron shavings formed a smoke barrier. This temporarily blocked their advance. The squad endured many hardships, and finally reached the square. Suddenly, the spotlight overheated and burned out its components. Now they could no longer see the ghosts' movements, and could only hide in a bus waiting for rescue. Fortunately, 3 tanks soon arrived at the square. Everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. The army had also equipped the tanks with spotlights. As the lights illuminated the building across, countless ghosts appeared in the building, watching the people in the square. The reinforcements who saw the ghosts for the first time also panicked. They disregarded the rescue target, and quickly opened fire on the building. They soon destroyed the building where the ghosts were located, but the reinforcements didn't realize that physical attacks were useless against the ghosts. After the smoke cleared, the ghosts reappeared at the base of the building. The enraged ghosts charged toward the reinforcements. In a matter of seconds, the reinforcements were nearly wiped out. One of the ghosts charged toward a tank, but strangely, it didn't pass through the tank directly. It was also surprised by its contact with the tank. The tank was rendered inoperable after the collision. The spotlight was also damaged and went out. Everyone fell into blind panic again. The invisible ghosts crazily slaughtered the soldiers. At this moment, Mark and the others noticed the boy was missing. He had exposed himself to the ghosts in order to retrieve the ceramic piece left by his father. Everyone rushed toward the boy, but it was too late. The boy lost his life just like that. It was evident that the ghosts had no compassion. They only wanted to harvest lives. Everyone stayed in place and fell into despair. Fortunately, the helicopter finally arrived for their rescue. Everyone hurriedly ran toward the aircraft. At this moment, Mark noticed that the ghosts were having difficulty advancing due to the airflow. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind. He took off the iron shrapnel bomb he was carrying and threw it to the ground. Countless iron shavings were blown toward the ghosts by the airflow. This bought precious time for everyone. The group finally left the hellish square. However, they hadn't even rested for a moment when James called to inform them that the base had fallen. They needed to head to a new refuge. On the way, they saw that the ghosts had spread to the streets. There were flashes everywhere as they slaughtered humans. The plane soon arrived at the refuge and dropped them off. There were many civilians here. It was uncertain how long they could hold out. The colonel instructed them to gather supplies as much as possible. At the same time, they should find a way to contact the outside world. Mark once again approached the girl to ask about her father's occupation. Why did her father know so much about the ghosts? The girl told him that her father had previously worked at the nuclear power plant. He was responsible for manufacturing ceramic containers there. The ghosts originated from the nuclear power plant. Suddenly, there was a tremor in the refuge. The soldiers raised their guns, ready for action. It turned out to be James arriving at the refuge with his troops. From James's reaction, it was clear that the base had suffered unprecedented blows. He told everyone that out of the 240 Special Forces members in the base, only 19 remained so far, and all the American soldiers in the refuge were the last remaining U.S. troops sent to this country. Everyone fell into despair. They even argued about whether they should leave. Meanwhile, Mark was deep in thought on the side. He summarized the experiences of the day, and suddenly understood. The reconnaissance soldier who had hidden in the bathtub had escaped disaster. The M1 main battle tank had ceramic partitions in its armor, so the ghosts couldn't pass through the tank either. Since there were materials it couldn't penetrate, this meant it wasn't naturally occurring, but artificial. In nature, matter has three states: solid, gas, and liquid. The same substance can transition between these three states, but beyond that, there is an artificial state, which is the condensate state predicted by Einstein and Bose. It has several characteristics, such as being slowed down by iron shavings, able to pass through walls but not through ceramics. It also has an extremely low physical temperature, making contact lethal. All of these characteristics match those of the ghosts. A condensate requires a vast amount of energy to form, and Masarovi has a nuclear power plant. The ghosts were a type of condensate weapon they had created. This was either a deliberate attack or an accidental leak. Although it's unclear why the ghosts maintained human forms, they were certainly artificial condensates. All states can be disintegrated, depending on the form and magnitude of the energy. So as long as they could create a plasma discharge gun, they could eliminate the ghosts. They needed to find parts to build the plasma gun, among the supplies in the refuge, and those brought by James. Soon, everyone began to take action. They dismantled the weapon, took out usable parts, and then found an energy battery to install on the weapon. After Mark's adjustments, they successfully built the plasma gun. It could release a focused energy pulse to disintegrate the condensate. Moreover, the soldiers found a robotic dog and installed a spotlight on it for scouting. Then they began to formulate a battle plan. The special forces would attract attention at the front door. Meanwhile, Mark would need to infiltrate the nuclear power plant to find the source. Soon, the next day arrived. Everyone arrived at the nuclear power plant fully armed. They set down the robotic dog and turned on the spotlight. They found many condensate particles scattered at the entrance. The colonel immediately readied the plasma gun on the spot. At this moment, the ghosts noticed their arrival and began to take form. As the charging completed, the colonel squeezed the trigger. Seeing the ghosts being eliminated, the other soldiers quickly descended. They launched a full assault on the nuclear power plant. At the same time, Mark and Filani entered the heart of the nuclear power plant by helicopter. They needed to find the source. When the soldiers hold back the ghost. However, upon entering the nuclear power plant, they discovered that there were also ghosts guarding this place. The soldiers quickly drew their plasma guns and fired, but they didn't expect the ghosts here to move even faster. No matter how they aimed, they couldn't hit them. Two soldiers decided to stay behind to buy time. They urged Mark to go inside. Soon, the two of them successfully found the laboratory. However, a major accident had occurred here. Only a few bodies of researchers lay on the ground. Mark's deduction was correct. The ghosts were indeed artificial weapons, and at this moment, they were still being continuously produced. Mark used the spotlight to discover the condensate in the containers. The lab personnel scanned human molecular structures and printed the data using the condensate. This was a weapon production line. Then the two of them went to the energy supply warehouse. They were shocked by the scene before them. It seemed that this was the source of the ghosts. Countless condensate ghosts were trapped in ceramic containers, and they were all conscious, looking extremely frightened. Half of the containers had leaked due to the accident, which had opened Pandora's box. The researchers hadn't had time to stop it before being slaughtered. In the center was a control console. Mark used a researcher's ID card to log in. This was a computer to terminate the energy supply to the ghosts. As long as the supply line was cut, the ghosts could be killed. Mark climbed onto the pipe to prepare to dismantle it. Meanwhile, the soldiers outside had eliminated most of the ghosts. With their plasma guns, they were just about to take a break, when the scattered condensate around them suddenly converged. they gradually formed an energy mass. The soldiers' plasma guns were no longer effective against it. In an instant, several soldiers fell. The colonel quickly gathered the plasma guns around. He connected them in series to create a plasma cannon, and installed all the batteries to begin charging. The two in the laboratory were also not optimistic. Explosions on the ground gradually cracked the containers. The ghosts realized that Mark was trying to cut off the energy supply. They broke free from their cages to stop Mark. Fortunately, Filani timely scattered them. At this moment, the plasma cannon had finished charging. The explosion shattered the energy mass, but it also fractured the laboratory's containers. Countless ghosts charged toward Mark. Everyone was in imminent danger. Mark finally cut off the energy supply at the last moment. All the ghosts froze in place and then dissipated. The soldiers outside also escaped disaster. Even more surprisingly, the two soldiers who covered for Mark had also survived. With all the condensates dissipated, the battle finally came to an end. Mark and Filani prepared to leave. However, they inadvertently stumbled into a basement. Here, they learned why the ghosts had consciousness. There were many independently existing human nervous systems. They had been extracted, and were submerged in nutrient solution. Connected by data cables to the condensate, they transformed into ghosts. These individuals were trapped between life and death, experiencing agony. Thus, they killed when they saw people to vent their pain. Mark didn't want them to suffer any longer. He directly cut off their life supply. These people were finally freed, but Filani stopped Mark from proceeding, because this was all evidence. It was the result of so many sacrifices. However, Mark was worried that the military and higher-ups would obtain this technology. They would replicate it to use against their own enemies. He didn't want science to be presented in this manner, so Mark ultimately destroyed all the experimental data. Then, the survivors all returned to the refuge. A new research team arrived. They were tasked with dismantling and rebuilding the entire nuclear power plant. The recently surviving Special Forces members hadn't even rested. They organized their gear and set out on a new journey again.
They don't stop, do they?
I don't think they know how.
Mark could only take a plane back to his home country. The film ends here. Spectral is a sci-fi film based on real concepts. The Bose-Einstein condensate was predicted in 1920 by Bose and Einstein. It was confirmed by scientists 75 years later. In this state, atoms are gathered together to present a lowest energy quantum state, forming a whole. They exhibit the same characteristics. Its temperature approaches absolute zero, so human contact could cause low temperature burning. The film is set against a backdrop of war. Scientists created a system to control the condensate, but a leak eventually made it uncontrollable. Countless civilians died at their hands. This technology, which humanity could not master, was turned into a weapon. It could ultimately harm all of humanity. When the atomic bomb was developed, Oppenheimer was concerned that chain reactions could ignite the atmosphere. Einstein also once said that while we don't know what weapons will be used in World War III, World War IV will surely be fought with sticks and stones. Humanity should cherish the hard-earned peace. The film's special effects are outstanding. They realistically portray the ghosts and the condensate. The plot exhibits some personal heroism, but in times of crisis, there are always heroes who step up to save those around them. Overall, the film excels in both visual effects and subject matter. It's worth watching. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is my greatest encouragement.